Hi, everybody. Sorry it took me a minute to get here. Hang on 1 second. Sorry, we're having a little technical stuff right now just because of some last minute details in the kitchen. But as you can see, we are having a special Blaze Baking with Rach episode on a Friday afternoon. So we're calling it Blaze Baking with Rach Friday Frontliners. And you can see I have two guests with me today. Which I'm really excited about. We have Cindy Muchnick and Jenn Curtis here, and I'm going to introduce their bio in a sec. But first, for those of you who are watching the show for the first time or are new to the Blaze, I want to welcome you to A Mighty Blaze. We started in the beginning of the pandemic over a year and a half ago. Wow. And it was started by New York Times bestselling authors Caroline Levitt and Jenna Blum, who saw a need to get books out into the world during the pandemic when all these book tours were canceled. And now we have grown to a team of, I think, 35 plus creative professionals who work to promote books and get books out in the world. We have weekly shows, bi-weekly shows, monthly shows. I'm Rachel Levy Lesser, the host of Blaze Baking with Rach. It's kind of funny to introduce myself. Usually Jenna Blum, our co-founder, introduces me, but she is busy getting ready for her own book tour. More information on that soon. So I am an author. I'm going to promote my most recent book, Life's Accessories, a Memoir and Fashion Guide. Was my most recent book, which we can talk about a little bit. I also love to bake. I've worked in marketing. I've worked in PR. I love to write. I am also a parent of two teenagers, which we're going to talk about a little bit more with our guests, Cindy and Jenn. So let me tell you guys a little bit about them. Cindy Muchnick, give a wave, is an expert in the college admissions process. She got her start in admissions offices before opening a private study skills and college counseling business in Southern California, which she ran for over 15 years. As an assistant director of admission for the Illinois Institute of Technology and the University of Chicago, she screened and reviewed over 3,000 applicants. Wow. Interviewed prospective students and served on the admissions committee to evaluate borderline applicants and appeals cases. Then, as an educational consultant, she helped hundreds of high school students navigate their academic journeys, including course selection, study skills, time management, and college applications. Since closing her private educational practice in 2011, Cindy has focused on public speaking to student, parent, school, and business groups on a variety of education-related topics. Over the course of her career, Cindy has written numerous books. The Parent Compass, which we're going to talk about today, is her 10th book. Can you believe that? Cindy holds a bachelor's degree in political science and art history from Stanford University and a master's degree in liberal studies from Nova Southeastern University. Some of the other twists and turns in her multifaceted career include her stints as a campus tour guide. I wonder if she can walk backwards.
Yes.
And volunteer student coordinator for Stanford's Office of Undergraduate Admission and a 10th grade history teacher. I was a history major in college at the University School in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Cindy raised her family in Newport Beach, California, and moved to Menlo Park, California in 2018, where she resides with her husband and two teens, and she's the mother of 4 children in all. So we have a lot to talk to Cindy about. Jenn Curtis, who Jenn give a wave, owns FutureWise Consulting, an educational consulting company in Orange County, California. She has guided hundreds of high school students from throughout the United States through all aspects of the college admissions process. Her passion lies in empowering students to navigate their high school years with confidence, emphasizing self-advocacy, grit, and intention. I love all of that. Jenn speaks to parent organizations and schools about education, college admissions, and parenting. She has been interviewed on a wide variety of radio shows and higher education, college admission, and parenting podcasts. I'm so fascinated by all you guys have done. She developed a college and career readiness program for first-generation students that has been implemented in a local elementary school for 8 years. Jenn's interest in mental health and research began while an undergraduate at UCLA, where she worked in a psychology research lab. After college at UC Irvine's Child Development Center, Jenn researched treatments for learning disabilities, co-authored a published study on a novel diagnostic tool for ADHD, and supervised and trained undergraduate researchers. Jenn earned her bachelor's degree in psychology from UCLA's Honors College and master's degree in social work from the University of Southern California, where she was elected to Phi Beta Kappa Honor Society and selected as Dean Scholar. Jenn earned her college counseling certificate from UCLA. She resides in San Clemente, California with her husband and 2 daughters. I would say we have two well-educated, knowledgeable experts who are amazing writers and who are going to bake with us today. Welcome, Jen and Cindy. Sorry I had to have my glasses on for that one. I'm getting old.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us.
I'm so happy you're here. I have to say, I know you've been on a book tour for a long time and you do a ton of PR and you're amazing at it, but am I correct in saying this is your first baking show?
This
Absolutely.
Is I think my whole family is shocked that I'm on anything that relates to the kitchen because my skills are not very good in this room of the house. I'm good at talking and sharing and not so good at baking and cooking, but I'm game to try. You're going to teach me today, Rachel.
Yes, for sure. And
I already burned the butter, by the way.
So, what did you say?
I already burned the butter.
Oh, okay, that's good. Well,
so we're off to a good start.
Our viewers on Blaze Baking with Rach know this. We have had everyone on from the founder of Magnolia Bakery to Flour Bakery, somebody who beat Bobby Flay, like some real big time cooks, just like Cindy and Jen. And I will say that on Blaze Baking with Rach, we are not perfectionists and things get messed up and we use substitutions. I mean, the show really started in January 2021 when it was freezing cold outside, at least where I am in the Northeast. We were in the midst of a pandemic, pre-vaccines, and you couldn't even get a lot of material, a lot of, flour and yeast and sugars and stuff. So we just kind of go with it. We don't stress about that.
It sounds like parenting, Rachel. There's a lot of, gray areas and a little bit of improvising that goes along the way. So we're in good company.
Sure. Well, so we're going to bake today healthy-ish Greek yogurt brownies, which is a recipe we all came up with together. But before we get started on the baking, can you guys talk a little bit about, and I love this part of your book. I read this book twice, by the way. I have an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old. I'm in the thick of parenting teens and college admissions and high schools and grades and tests and extracurriculars and everything. And so I devoured it and I told all my friends about it and they devoured it. But can you talk a little bit about the importance of kind of doing an activity such as baking or cooking with your kids and the value you find in that?
Yeah, we have a whole chapter actually dedicated to, it's called Life After 3 p.m. And this would be probably one of those activities that happens after 3 p.m. or on the weekends. And there have been actual studies through, like white papers and research. And I'm going to actually quote from our book, a white paper from Columbia University National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse talked about family meals and the importance of sitting down together and saying that teens who frequently have family meals have higher quality relationships with their parents, and they're less likely to use drugs, drink, or smoke. But also the activity of doing and baking together is incredibly important because it does elicit those great conversations that we can't sometimes have when we're otherwise distracted by media, social media, and life's distractions. So it's just a good way to get conversations across, and we're believers in involving our kids in the kitchen. Sometimes it just means doing the sous chef kind of things, or sometimes it means some of my kids actually are better than I am at hanging out in here, so I follow their lead.
I get that feeling. You think so too, Jen? There's a big connection.
Absolutely. My kids are younger, and so we try to bake with each other quite a bit. Especially during the pandemic. I mean, honestly, I will say we really got into it a lot when my husband's actually a first responder. And so there were days where we were kind of stuck at home and couldn't go out to the grocery store because I didn't want to take them with me and he was gone for several days. And we had to really get creative, which was fun. Like, I don't normally bake pancakes from scratch, but we started to during the pandemic. And actually to this day, now that's kind of a Saturday morning tradition of ours, is to come together and bake the pancakes from scratch. So I actually really gained an appreciation for baking. And my girls actually, I will say this very morning, one of my daughters asked if when she got home from school today, we could make pumpkin bread together, which will be from a Trader Joe's box, but it will be just as tasty.
Yeah, that's really good. And if you add 1 can of pumpkin puree to that, and they sell that at Trader Joe's too, it makes it even more moist.
Like moist, yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of little tricks like that. All right, before we really get into more of the meat of the questions, I guess, let's put together our dry ingredients. And Jen and Cindy, because they are such good teachers and students, will be baking along with us. So, and we've done a little stuff ahead of time. We're gonna first do our dry ingredients together, and I pre-measured everything. We're putting in a 1/4 cup of almond flour. Are you guys using almond flour?
Yes.
So a 1/4 cup of almond flour.
There's my bag to prove it.
Okay, good. That's good. A quarter cup of unsweetened cocoa.
Yes.
This is such a good recipe. And
Also
then how much salt is it? A quarter teaspoon of salt. Okay.
Do we just kind of whisk them together a little?
Yeah, you know what? Whisk. I'm using the spoon. Yeah, you could whisk it together.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Rachel,
and this is a really good base, I think, to use for any kind of brownie.
This is the first time I've made brownies from scratch without just adding an egg and oil in my entire 52 years of being alive.
This is big.
It's my confession.
Can you tell us a little bit while we're sort of mixing the dry ingredients? Because I know you've written other books before, Cindy. I think this is your 10th. What inspired you to write The Parent Compass when you did? Because it came out in last year. Yeah,
it came out in the fall of 2020. Before we knew COVID was really hit. It went to press, but really what started it was back in March of 2019, the Varsity Blues scandal, otherwise known as the college admissions scandal, hit the headlines. And Jen and I picked up the phone and called one another in shock at what was going on and playing out in the news before our eyes. We felt like we'd been gut punched, and we just really started taking kind of deep analysis into the things and the patterns we were seeing in our own students and our own families that were creating kind of stress and anxiety in kids that started with their parents. And we observed parents who were doing things really well and their kids were thriving. And then we observed some parents who were maybe micromanaging and helicoptering, and that was showing up in their kids. We did not observe any parents doing anything illegal, so we are far from what was going on in Varsity Blues, but that was really the catalyst.
Put that out there.
Yeah, that was the catalyst for really trying to give parents an etiquette book, a book to teach them how to navigate these tween and teen years as parents while being aware and preserving their teens' mental health, and also, preserving the relationship between them and the teen. And so we interviewed thought leaders. We, looked at all the research out there. We interviewed teachers, teens, parents, college counselors, and then we really drew a lot from our own experience as educational consultants, looking at various clients and various situations we'd exhibited and or observed in our clients, and tried to really tell a lot of anecdotes and stories to better educate parents in this journey. And it seemed to also, really take on more traction during COVID, which has created a lot more uncertainty and more stress. And the book still kind of holds together as a good resource during these extra uncertain times.
Yeah, first of all, so well said. I love the title of it, The Parent Compass. Can you explain what the Parent Compass means to you and how we should sort of define that? Because ever since I read the book, I read a lot. I read this book twice. I end up talking to my friends about everything that I read, and I'll say, well, I'm just following my parent compass. And they're like, what are you talking about?
So I will say, I'll kind of give you a little bit of a background, which is kind of why Cindy and I were laughing for a second. But so first of all, we wear compass necklaces, both of us. Do you have yours on? Yeah. As kind of our tangible reminder. Yes. You can include that in your next book or as an addendum.
This book.
Love it. Yeah.
So as Cindy said, the book started out as an etiquette book. And so we had a title that really did kind of have to do with parent behavior, parent etiquette. And long story short, we ended up having a bit of a title crisis after the book was written, and about when it was about to go to press. We had to think of another title, and we pulled family members, friends, and ultimately ended up coming up with the Parent Compass, which has really, we've really come to fully embrace, because I think what it does is, one, I think getting your mind around the idea that Parent Compass can be a movement. We would like it to be a movement, a way to kind of conceptualize how to more appropriately parent our tweens and teens. And we also think that it can kind of be like a symbol or a sort of like a true north. As you just mentioned, it's sort of like okay, am I following my parent compass right now? Like a check-in with yourself, a way to hold yourself accountable. And so the book really just is it's chock full of tools that we understand some will work with some families, others won't. We really want families to try them on and see what works in the context of their own home. But it offers just a ton of tools and strategies to really navigate these years with confidence.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, just as a parent, living this right now, I found it so chock full of information. The anecdotes were awesome because you talk about a lot of different families and kids. I remember reading one. I mean, I know these are sort of made up names. There was a family with Jack and Nate, and they had two sons that had, from the same two parents that had completely different, visions for what they wanted to be, study habits, the ways they were. And I think that's so important for our generation, if I can speak a little bit, like to recognize the individual child. Whereas I feel like maybe a generation ago, or even before then, kids were all sort of more grouped into like, you're all going to do the same thing kind of thing. Yeah.
Or even that they're going to emulate us as well, right? That I swam when I was younger. So I want my child to, carry on that tradition, but maybe she's not very good at swimming or really doesn't like swimming. And I think we can all fall into that trap too.
For sure. Definitely. I mean, I sent you guys the essay from my book there was one essay in it about parenting. And that was kind of my thing, that you can't dress up your kids to be little versions of yourselves. They're just not, that's just not who they are. Yeah.
Yeah. At some point they look back at those photos and you get in big trouble anyway. So, the sooner you can let them start to be individuals and appreciate them as individuals, probably the better. Although it is pretty fun to dress them alike when they're little.
Oh, I miss dressing up my kids, especially my daughter. I used to dress her like my doll, but that's another book. Yeah. I'm going to keep us on track. We have our dry ingredients here. So we have that in a separate bowl. And then in our larger bowl, I did stuff ahead of time. You're supposed to take 4 ounces of bittersweet chocolate and melt it in a microwave, whatever you have, with 2 tablespoons of butter, which I already did ahead of time.
I'm going to do that right now.
I need to melt mine.
Okay, go ahead and melt. These are highly educated parenting experts who I'm basically teaching how to bake right here, which I love.
Okay, that's melting. What else goes in with the chocolate and the butter? What's the other?
So that should be your bigger bowl. Also, this is sort of what makes them healthy-ish, I'll say. And I think they're delicious.
I laughed at the healthy thing because I did chop up like 3 chocolate bars.
Right. They're not that healthy. And it's funny, I made them last week and I gave them to my kids. Yeah. My kids said they don't taste healthy. They don't. They're good.
That's good.
But they are gluten-free. And instead of using like a lot of butter, high-fat milk and stuff like that, we're using 3/4 of a cup of vanilla Greek yogurt, which I have right here. Now, if you don't
and my husband did point that out. When he was helping me measure all this out, he's like, "How much sugar?" I was like, "These
are sugar.
They are healthy.
Everything in moderation, and everything is natural. It's Greek yogurt, sugar, all that kind of stuff. So we're adding into the melted chocolate the yogurt, and don't take your time with the chocolate.
Yeah, mine melted. Okay.
Yeah. So I have the chocolate and the yogurt, and also a 1/2 cup of sugar. Both.
Okay. Oh, that's my dog. Okay, Rachel.
Yes.
After the melted stuff, what else are we adding? Could you walk me through?
Oh, sure. Into that bowl, you have the melted chocolate and butter, and you're adding in 3/4 a cup of vanilla Greek yogurt, or any kind of Greek yogurt. If you have plain Greek yogurt, that's fine.
Okay.
1/2 cup of sugar.
Yep.
And you're going to mix that together along with 2 eggs.
Okay.
Now, we had talked ahead of time, and I think Cindy and Jen, you're going to stir your stuff together, right?
Yep.
I'm going to use my KitchenAid because it's part of the show.
And the 2 eggs also go in now.
2 eggs, yep.
And the vanilla.
See?
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like Julia Childs right now.
Well, you're reminding me.
A little accent or something going on here to enjoy.
It's 1 teaspoon of vanilla.
Okay. Here we go.
Chocolate is almost there.
Yeah.
We have our producer behind the scenes, Julie, who's also a mom of teens and knows about college admissions and essay writing too, and things like that. And she just popped up in our chat. If anybody has any baking questions or parenting questions, educational questions, definitely pop them up in the chat for sure.
So my mixture is pretty grainy. It's almost a little gritty, it looks like. I don't know.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay.
It's all going to come together when you mix it all together.
Okay.
So what we're mixing together in the big bowl is all called the wet ingredients. It's the chocolate, the vanilla, the sugar, the yogurt. I'm going to put mine on right now.
Okay.
Hopefully it's not too loud.
I want to know, can we bring our teenagers in to do the dishes? Do you think they'll do that after?
Yeah, I mean, this is
The answer is yes.
teenagers. You know, it's 4:00 on the East Coast. Cindy and Jenn are in California, so it's only 1:00.
That's
But
right.
my daughter is home, but she's not in the kitchen, and my son's not home yet. So
Okay.
yeah. So this looks really good blended together, I have to say.
Yum, yum.
Okay.
And by the way, we're using almond flour in our dry ingredients. You could use a variety of different flours. You could use oat flour. You could use regular flour. Of course, then it wouldn't be gluten-free, which is fine too. But, you know, for those with a gluten allergy. So here's what my wet mixture looks like. Nice and yummy.
Okay. Okay. Almost there. Okay. And the 2 eggs, correct?
And the
Yes?
2 eggs, yep.
Okay.
You know, I really get now how these people on TV make it so easy. It's all pre-measured. You just throw it all in.
Meat plus, we call it.
And then someone else does the dishes.
Right.
Yeah.
Your kids, your teenage kids can do the dishes.
I like it. Chores are important. Chores are
Right.
important.
Yeah. What have you learned? What would you say are some of, I know this is sort of a hard question, but some of the most important, you know, quick takeaways that some of our viewers could get from your book? Those of us who are maybe parenting teens in high school right now, who maybe the parents are feeling stressed or the kids are feeling stressed. What takeaways can you offer them / us?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of my favorite takeaways that Jen and I typically bring up is to really just appreciate your own individual child, which is sometimes hard to do. We talked about that a little bit earlier, maybe because they communicate differently, maybe because they have very different interests or very different academic styles than you might have had, and to really try and engage with each of your individual kids and appreciate what it is that excites them, learn from them about their passions if they're different from yours, and really not try to push things on them that you feel are, you know, a better path for them, because they need to be able to have this be their journey, and we had our turn. So that would be one of my big book takeaways. Jen's probably got a dozen more.
I'm like, which one do I choose? I think I would say well, maybe 2. Praise the journey and not the destination. That's kind of one of my favorite things, is to really focus on your child's effort and what they put into getting better in school, getting better at whatever things they like to do out of the classroom, rather than focusing on a certain grade and praising them for that certain grade. So I think that's 1. And then 2 would be to really rest in the fact that there truly is a right fit college for everyone. And to really understand that and not pay too much attention to, you know, what you hear in the rumor mill about what a certain school is like or is not like. I
can feel the blood pressure going down amongst all of our viewers, all my friends, because it's that time of year,
right? But I think like we have a whole chapter about rankings, because so many families, I think, misinterpret what the rankings really are measuring. And so instead of paying attention to, you know, measurements like that truly really don't mean very much in terms of student outcomes and whether or not they can converse with adults or think critically, instead just looking at schools that are the right fit school for that kid's, you know, learning objectives and goals. And again, like I said, just knowing that there is a perfect fit school for every kid, and that it really matters. We note a challenge success white paper in our book, where research actually shows that it matters more what a student does on his or her college campus than the name of where that student goes in their long-term success and well-being.
That's such a good point. Well, you guys wrote this. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but partially maybe in response or as a reaction to the Varsity Blues scandal, which is sort of the opposite of what you're talking about, parents' involvement going to a point of being illegal. But in terms of, I feel like on today's kids, there's so much pressure of rankings and where to go and what to do. And then you get in and you don't even think about what you're going to do there. That's like part of the journey, I guess, right?
Yeah, and not only do you not think about what you're going to do there, if we are kind of, hovering and micromanaging and fixing in all the years that they're with us, then when they get there, they're not equipped. They're not ready to wake themselves up in the morning and go talk to their professors if they have a problem and find solutions to their everyday problems, because they're so dependent on what you've done for them. And so I think, for parents to restrain themselves, to show restraint in, coming in to solve problems and pushing our kids in certain directions and doing maybe what we think we know is right because we're so much older and wiser, it's very counterintuitive, right? Because as parents, we love them. We want to protect them. We want to, not have them feel discomfort. But that discomfort and those mistakes they make and the failures along the way, as we know, also are so important for their growth and so important for them to recover from that and come out the other side without us swooping in all the time. And it's very hard. Look, practicing your parent compass is not easy. What we're asking parents to do is not like, oh, follow this and everything will be great. You have to make a commitment that you're willing to try to make changes. And Jen and I talk about our own mistakes very openly in the book. We are not.
You guys have made mistakes?
We are far from perfect. We continue to make them, and we continue to turn to our tangible reminder that Jen gave me so that we, get back on track when we fall off.
I love that. That's great. I wrote an essay many years ago called Good Dinner Party Conversation, and it was about all the mishaps and fails and trials and tribulations. Particularly for me, it was like in college and being a young adult. And like I always say, it made great dinner party conversation.
Can you imagine though? I mean, as you're saying that, like, can you imagine if we all were that open at dinner parties with talking about instead of, oh, Jimmy's doing this and he's doing that. If we were all instead sitting there talking about, man, I really failed today. Like, right. How much more real and how
I love those conversations. I love those conversations.
So we went last week to our first outdoor parent gathering night for the freshmen. My daughter's a freshman at her high school, and they had this outdoor gathering. They invited parents. Everyone showed up because people were so happy to be engaging face to face outside, masked or unmasked, and definitely vaccinated. And a lot of parents shared, we said, how's it going with your kid? And my husband and I were in the car ride home saying, parents were really honest. I mean, they were saying, my kid is really struggling to be back right now. It is not as smooth sailing as I'd hoped it would be. And we're really, trying to figure this out. And I felt like it was so liberating to hear the honesty, because we're all struggling as parents too, to try to support them through this really unusual time that we don't have a perfect roadmap for. And I think this re-entry has been difficult for parents and for students. And we obviously want to support them, but it was really helpful and therapeutic for me to talk to some of these other parents about what's your kid struggling with? And let me tell you what my kid's struggling with. It felt very honest and, and really helpful.
Well, this kind of leads to a question that just popped up in the chat from a viewer, which is the issue of mental health in teens. And I know that's a big question, but how you address that in the book, sort of, if you could speak generally to that or more specifically, and I had to put on my glasses to read that. That's how old I'm getting. Yeah.
Mental health and well-being, I would say, is sort of woven throughout the entire book. In fact, our subtitle is Navigating Your Teen's Wellness and Academic Journey in Today's Competitive World. And so it really does have the foundation of take the long view to parenting and take in every decision you're making, take into consideration what all the pushing is doing to your child's mental health. So we do give mental health statistics, for example, the fact that anxiety and depression has doubled on college campuses in the last 10 years. And we know that is starting before those students even step foot on campus. So what's contributing to that? And I would say that the backbone of the whole book is let's change our behavior as parents. Let's change what we're doing so that we can help facilitate positive, mental health in our kids. And keeping those lines of communication open so that we can constantly be talking about it and, making sure that they're okay. So I would say that it really forms the foundation for every single tip and strategy that we're giving parents.
Yeah. And I think I just add to that, Rachel, that, that mental health and wellness, it is so exhilarating or liberating to know that those terms are open now. They're okay to talk about. It's not a stigma. I mean, I don't know how many parents I talk to that are like, well, my therapist said this and my kid's therapist said that. And I'm like, whoa, people are very open about talking about getting support that they need to have to, talk to others, whether it's a school counselor, whether it's an older sibling, whether it's a parent. And we were just talking on a recent podcast about how accessible mental health is through pretty much every health plan on the planet has virtual mental health offerings. And a lot of teens and parents are taking advantage of that to have someone else to bounce things off of. And Jenn was the perfect writing partner for this book because, with her expertise and background in mental health, it just made a really good marriage between, kind of the academic side of things and the navigating school, along with, keeping this all as healthy as possible for our kids. Because the last thing we want to do is, have our kids in major therapy as adults talking about all the mistakes their parents made. Yeah. If your kids know you're trying, if you buy the Parent Compass and you have
your kids will not be in therapy as adults.
You tell your kids, I'm trying to do better. I'm really trying. And I tell my kids even, they'll call me on something and they'll say, is that in the Parent Compass? I'll say, you're right. I need to do better too. I need to practice also what I preach.
You have to walk the walk. Yeah. Yep. Well, on that note, let's just take a little break to move on with our cooking show with Julia Childs here. So we're going to add you added the eggs to the wet ingredients, mix them in. We're going to add the dry ingredients into the wet ingredients.
Okay. Why is it so important that you separate those, Rachel? Like, you can't do it all at once.
Sorry, wait, what did you say? Why is it so important that you separate them?
It's important that you separate wet and dry. Sometimes I just kind of throw it all in.
Wait, I think this is so funny. I'm asking you about parenting and you're asking me about baking. It's like we're having a coffee chat or something, which I love. Yeah. I think if you're in a rush, you don't always have to, but I think it's important to put the dry ingredients together first, so it sort of is all sifted together. Because, for example, if we're not using it in this, but if you're using something like a baking soda or something that's more of like a scientific thing, it all has to be blended and sifted together first with the dry ingredients so that you don't have a chunk of salt sitting somewhere or a chunk of this, you want it all evenly.
Like a chemistry. We're doing chemistry in the kitchen.
Well,
for every day.
Baking is a science. And, and in Mighty Blaze, we're very creative people. We're not such math people, but there is math involved in baking. I'm sorry to say. That's why, back to our initial conversation of kids of all ages, particularly little kids. I remember when my kids were little, it was fun to get them to measure a quarter of a cup, a half of a cup, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I'm going to finish blending.
Oh, looks great.
Mine smells so good.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just seeing how many chocolate chips we're going to use.
So I forgot that we melted the shaved chocolate with the butter. And I was
that's what I was just looking at. I was like, did I make chocolate? I think we got it.
It does smell really good.
Rachel, I still have chocolate chips. Is that the last?
That's the next step.
So here's what this is going to look like now. And then you add a quarter to a half of chocolate chips. I'm adding a half because
I just have a confession to make. When my daughter left for school and heard that I was making brownies, she said, would I please put some batter, even though I know it has raw eggs, into
It's
a little
okay.
container so she can have some when she gets home. So I'm going to just put a little bit in here.
But that's
Don't
so
tell.
cute.
Don't tell.
My family is so used to me baking. It's like if there's not something baking.
Oh, this is very exciting. So this is going in
You know what I did miss?
What'd you miss?
I did miss the vanilla, but I can do that now.
That's okay.
Correct.
Throw in the vanilla.
1, 2, 3. Okay.
And I'm just gonna take the batter out. This is so good. Yeah, for those of you who have only made brownies from mixes because you're intimidated by doing it from scratch, it's really not that hard. We did with Elisa Torrey from Magnolia Bakery. We made these awesome brownies from scratch, and we added like a cream cheese blend with Oreos on that, and you could use that as a base. You could use this once you have a base for brownies. You can use it with anything, so it's good.
I have to say, just, I'm not trying to be braggy to any of the, people watching this, but I'm feeling very proud of myself. Like
You should be.
I was going to say, if we can do it, anyone can do it.
You wrote 10 books and you made brownies.
We all have our skill set. And, I got these great appliances and things for my wedding, KitchenAids and this and that. And they're collecting some dust, I will say. So this is good. This is breaking me out of my
Well, I bake almost every day. The Blaze audience knows this. I just redid my kitchen and it's kind of set for my baking needs, which I love. I love it. I love it. So I should have said this before. For those of you who are going to bake in the oven right now, I'm actually not going to do that. But preheat your oven to 350, which is a pretty standard temperature, and then take a brownie pan. The recipe calls for 9 by 9. This is actually an 8 by 8, and that's totally fine.
I have an 8 by 8 too.
And I took a little scoop out. I wonder if an 8 by 8 would be better because mine might be a little thinner. But one of the viewers, Margaret Pinard, complimented me on saving some brownie batter for my daughter. So thank you, Margaret,
Thank you, Margaret. Maybe you can save some for Margaret.
That's great from the pages of the Parent Compass.
Right. That's right.
Saving brownie batter for your child.
I feel like that's a little bit of a parenting analogy too, sort of with, licking the spoon. It's kind of like everything in moderation, right?
Yeah.
Did we add the chocolate chips? My brain is off.
Yes, you did. Yes.
You did? Oh,
so I added a half a cup. Again,
okay, so should we transfer to
now we're transferring it into the greased brownie pan.
Okay.
So I just sprayed it with some cooking spray.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So we're gonna do that. It does smell so good in here.
Oh my God, the chocolate smells great.
Yeah.
My girls are gonna feel like they won the lottery today.
I
when they come from school.
I'm going to a football game after school to watch my son, but I don't know. I don't think I can bring this video to be gone by the time my kids get home. So I'm gonna just leave it here.
Well, I made these brownies. I feel like it's working. I made them last Sunday to try them out, and I gave them to people, and they loved them. So now we're excited to have another batch.
Okay, I'm going to also, now I know there's going to be a fight between my son and daughter. I'm going to also save the spatula in another container just to get extra points from my kids.
Yeah, now you're going a little overboard.
Is that a parenting compass?
I don't want someone to think I picked favorites, okay?
So basically, once you have this in here and your oven beeps to 350, you put it in the oven, and I think we're going to bake it for, I can't even remember how long we're baking it for. We're going to bake it for about 20 to 25 minutes.
Okay.
In my oven,
we can put it in, right?
22 minutes works.
Okay.
You have to look. After 20, I would say take it out and put a little toothpick or a fork in it and just make sure the batter's not raw, and then it's done.
Hey, do you guys have one of those?
Good. I don't know if I'm allowed to taste it, but I just did. That little kick of the salt
It's good.
is good.
Okay, I'm putting my timer on. Do you guys I have a little timer. I call it it's not an Alexa because my daughter's name is Alexa, so I have to call it Echo. So I tell the Echo, set a timer, and then it does it for me. But maybe I should just do it on my phone. What do you think?
Yeah. I just have a timer on my phone.
Yeah. Okay. And we're doing 20 minutes?
20 minutes. Yeah.
Okay.
So another step, and you don't have to do this. I know Jen and Cindy didn't do it, but I did this again ahead of time. The ganache, you make the ganache on top.
Oh.
Which I did in a pot on the stove, which was kind of fun. And that was just half a cup of heavy cream. Again, not so healthy. Half a cup of heavy cream. I think you could also use like coconut milk if you wanted to be a little bit healthier. A half a cup of bittersweet chocolate, and a teaspoon of vanilla. And you can do that ahead of time. You can do it while it's baking, after it's baking, but you just have to let it cool when you spread it on the brownies, because you don't want to put like the steaming hot ganache on top. So very decadent. So that's our recipe. And
I might sprinkle more sea salt on top.
Go for it.
I think that would work.
Who do you think you are, fancy girl?
Right.
I know. I mean, this is just unleashing this whole new world.
We're going to do a parenting with teen cookbook next. No.
Right. Yeah. No, but in all seriousness, I mean, the baking show did get started because in the pandemic, in the very beginning, I started doing Zoom lessons with my kids' friends and my friends' kids, because everybody was stuck at home and they know I love to bake and they love my recipes. So I started just doing it, and then I got connected with the Mighty Blaze. So, you know, baking is such a wonderful activity to do with your kids. And that whole after 3 p.m. chapter I love, because I feel like over the years, kids have become so scheduled. And it's just nice to kind of come home and have something like that to do with your parents, I think.
I think also, you know, just food in general, like having food moments with your kids, whether it's, you know, after school snack, you know, family dinner, which is ideal, but it could be family breakfast, family lunch, family snack. But just, you know, food is such as we all know, a wonderful way to come together. And you get, you know, when you're not attached to a device, you get that great communication that just kind of happens when you're not thinking, kind of like when you're doing a puzzle or playing a board game or something a little slower. And I think this baking is really fun. I mean, I did the vegetable garden thing during COVID. And again, had no idea what I was doing, like threw a lot of seeds in and had my kids help me. And it was a little wild. Had peas growing everywhere. Didn't know those had to go up a vine or up. You know, I mean, I just didn't really know.
I joined a farm during COVID and became a farmer.
It was fun. It was fun to do. And it kind of goes with that whole thing. So when we picked the tomatoes and brought them in and cut up the cucumber, it was kind of felt like we had created it from the earth, you know. It was fun.
I do think the family meal is important. I was telling you before we came on, my mom growing up always thought it was important for us to have dinner together every night. And I've tried to do that with my family too. And during COVID, you know, we were all at home. So my husband always says, well, family dinner again, night 100 and whatever.
I know.
You know, something interesting that we learned, because frankly, you know, like Cindy kind of touched on earlier, we don't pretend to have all the answers. And we learned a lot, and we changed a lot of our own parenting as a result of writing this book. But one thing that we learned in researching on the family dinners in particular was, you know, the research says that it's 5 days a week that's optimal. And I mean, frankly, when we're in a non-COVID time, when is that possible with all you know, everybody's schedules? But we also learned, because something that's always concerned me, I'll be honest, is the fact that my husband is a first responder. There's, you know, about half the time he's not here. And I really wanted to understand, what does that mean if you're a single parent, or if the grandparents have a lot of the caring or whatever. And it's not necessarily that the entire family has to be together, I guess, is my message. As Cindy touched on, we learned that it could be a breakfast, or it could be, you know, just having one parent there is enough. But really just this space to have kids open up the lines of communication, feel comfortable talking, and feel that they are understood in whatever happened to them during that day, and feel the presence of their parents. And I say presence on purpose, because we also talk about leaving tech aside. Do not bring tech to the dinner table. Or have your family agree on how that tech will be used if tech does come to the dinner table. But really just making sure that you're being present in the moment, and really taking in every single thing that your kids are trying to tell you.
Yeah, their technology is, you write a lot about technology in the book, which we didn't even really get to. But I mean, that's a 21st century parenting challenge like no other, I think.
It
was our toughest chapter.
That was the hardest chapter to write. We just kept, I mean, that gave us so many sleepless nights. Jen and I really thought, how can we write a parenting book for, you know, parents of teens and tweens without addressing it? And I will say, you know, we struggled, and we did a lot of interviewing and turning to experts on that, because there's obviously books and books written on it. And, you know, the science is still giving us lots of information. And for anyone who's seen what I would call a horror movie, The Social Dilemma, it's just it's pretty scary what's going on out there. But that goes back to that communication with our teens. if you, a lot of families, take away the phones at night and put them in a common area like the kitchen or, near the garage or whatever, but they forget that there's also, your watch is your technology, your computer's your technology, your iPad. There's other ways that kids can connect. Mm-hmm. And so what I would say is, oh, hello, dog.
We love dogs.
I know. To figure out as a family some kind of a tech plan. And you'll like this one, Rachel. There's an awesome author named Tiffany Schlain. She's up here in the Bay Area. She wrote a book called 24/6. And she and her family for 10 years have practiced what they call a tech Shabbat. And every Friday night they unplug. And every Saturday night they can plug back in. And so for 24 hours for the last 10 years, she and her children and her, whole family have been raised on a 24-hour tech break every single week.
Do that. I love that. That's funny. I just heard Kelly Corrigan's latest podcast. And by the way, Kelly Corrigan, who I love, I know you guys love her too. She on the front of your book says, launching into the teen years without this book in your hands is like taking to the sea in a boat with no rudder, so thank you, Kelly, for saying that. But Kelly had on actually a rabbi on her podcast the other day who uses Shabbat as a tech-free day.
That's good.
I think that's amazing. Whatever, it doesn't have to be for religious purposes, but to just take some kind of break. And we have no phones at the dinner table, and this is something else you wrote about in your book for parents, and it's hard, is modeling good behavior, right?
Right.
That's hard too. My kids will be like, Mom, and I'm
we found out from our research that it's actually the parents who are the culprits. I think they're twice as likely to bring tech to the dinner table than their kids are, which honestly was a little surprising, but makes sense.
Hey, Rachel, I want to bring up Kelly Corrigan again, who's one of my favorite people on the planet and favorite authors. And I would invite her into our kitchen to bake and have dinner. But if I can't do that, I just want to say how much we enjoyed reading your book.
Thank you.
Life Successories. Am I getting the title right? I don't have it right here. I should have had it right here. And it felt kind of Kelly Corrigan-esque to me.
Like absolutely. I had the same thought.
That's such a compliment.
Yes.
So for anyone who hasn't read that book of Rachel's, it was such a wonderful window into the incredible gal that she is, and to really get to know her wonderful mother and father and family and all of that. So thank you for sharing your memoir with us, because it gave us an opportunity to get to know you better. And we really like you. So, we're part of the same.
I like you too. And I should say, Cindy and I were connected behind the scenes from one of my good friends from college, Jill, who lives out in the Bay Area too, and is actually a therapist out there and knows a lot about good parenting as well. So it's a small world, and Cindy connected me with Jen. So no, it's great. And it's great to see, what other people are doing and how they're modeling good behavior. And it's funny about the technology though, because I got to the point now with my phone where sometimes my daughter will be on me and I'm like, I'm literally planning something about your life right now on my phone. So it's really about you. I just have to do it on my phone. I always felt like our parents, my mother wasn't on a phone like that. She would be on a phone like this. Writing something down.
Calendar.
Yep. Whereas I am
to-do lists.
I'm either working or organizing their lives.
We're filling out forms on our phones for things
all the time.
Yeah. I know.
So and that's a greater sort of issue in terms of just parenting in today's world, all the forms and all the questions and all the feedback and you want to keep up on it, but you also sometimes want to break from it.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to share with your Blaze listeners, Rachel, a little bit more just about our book, is to encourage Blaze listeners to maybe think about the Parent Compass as a book club read, because we have a lot of parents that have started creating these book clubs. They're popping up around the country, and we created a book club guide that's free to download off of our website.
It's on your website, right?
And just to give you like guidance.
And it's folded into future printings of the Parent Compass as well.
The new printings have the book club guide in the back, but the first printing doesn't. So that way you'll know which book you have. But that being said, it's just a great way to build your own little village and to share what we were kind of talking about. Instead of bragging about our kids, let's just get into the weeds and talk about what we're struggling with so that we can support each other as parents and help look out for each other's kids and be kind of, brave together as we try to follow our Parent Compass. And so Jen and I will pop into any book club we're invited to.
I need to have you to my book club.
So if
I actually killed my book club. I wrote an essay about that too. I started the book club and then I quit and killed it, which is another story. Yeah.
We do have a form on our website that you can fill out if you want us to show up at a book club and chat with you. Head to our website.
We will. And I often find when you have a book club made of a lot of parents and you're reading whatever you're reading, you often talk about kids anyway. So let this be an open invitation to put things out on the table and to have these questions and to have you both come in. I think that's such a wonderful idea. Yeah.
Thank you. And you could bring brownies when you go. You could
make
brownies.
Through the magic of planning in advance. This is some of the brownies after. You can see there's not many left because my kids ate.
Yeah. But I'm still going. I still have some time to wait. So, 8.5 more minutes. So we'll see.
Me too.
So I wanted to say that, definitely check out the Parent Compass. I know we have links up there. You could purchase it on Bookshop. You can go to the Parent Compass website. There's so much information out there. You could contact Cindy and Jen to come to your book club virtually, or maybe in person if you live in California. And they're all over the place. And they're just, for me, such a pleasure to talk to you and such a wealth of information. And just as a parent, I'm so grateful that you wrote this and that I don't want to say you started the conversation, but you really opened up the doors to this conversation. And I think it's so important and just really valuable.
Well, thank you. And Rachel, we know that you're in the thick of things, being a parent of teens, going through the college application process. And there's a whole chapter on how to behave as a parent during that process, which kind of is the opposite of the Varsity Blues way to be involved. And so in any event, we encourage parents who are at that stage in the journey to take a look at that. And then we also encourage parents to look at our final chapter, which talks about kids who aren't taking the path to college, the alternate routes that there are out there. Not everybody, wants that to be their final destination, and it's not necessarily the right fit for everyone. And so there's a lot of other alternatives to four-year colleges that are becoming, just really more accepted in the world that we're living in. So,
and I will say too, I know you probably didn't expect your book to come out right before there was a global pandemic and a shutdown, and that's why we developed the Blaze to promote books like this and many others. But it's sort of timely in the sense that it was needed during COVID because the education system was changing. People were, because of COVID, doing things like taking a semester off, taking a gap years. Standardized tests became optional. Mental health became a bigger issue. There's a lot in here, not that you wrote it knowing there was going to be a global pandemic, because how would you? But I think it's so interesting to read this at home during this time.
An interesting anecdote to that, right before the book did go to press, post-title crisis, we had a call with our publisher who said, this pandemic thing is not going away anytime soon. And so we had the opportunity very last minute to go through and make changes to the book that made it kind of adapt more to the world that we're living in and the world that we're going to be living in moving forward. And the interesting part is we barely changed a single thing. I think we changed literally a couple words here and there. And the point is, I think this book is applicable to pre-COVID and post-COVID in so many different ways and in just how we can parent. So and I think I'll add, the PS to that story was we were also offered to delay the printing of the book until after COVID had ended, in quotes. And Jen and I said, no way, we're ready, we're teed up, we need to get this content out as soon as possible.
That's a whole other conversation that we're having in a Mighty Blaze, and we're going to talk, that's why we're promoting books and authors, and now there's delays in paper and printing and book tours, and so it's just interesting. The world is changing. I know you guys are keeping it up as parenting experts, and we hope we're doing so, on a Mighty Blaze.
A Mighty Blaze is so wonderful, and we wish we knew about you sooner, actually, but we're so glad that we have crossed paths with you and your
for sure, and you'll come back with your next book. But before we begin,
what you're doing for authors is truly amazing. It really comes from a place of of support and love. And I will say the virtual community of authors, bookstagrammers, platforms, therapists. There is a lot of love and support in the community, sure. And it feels really good. We are so grateful for those who have kind of engaged with us through technology as opposed to face-to-face. We're having our first face-to-face book signing in New Hampshire in November.
Oh, where is that going to be?
At the bookery. And Jen and I, just so you know, Jen and I have seen each other in person one time for 15 minutes since the book came out. We have only seen each other on screens. And so we are so excited to engage with readers and to be together and to be in a real bookstore, smelling real books and touching real books. And
well, I'm sure people can go on your website to find out about your virtual events
and our social media for sure.
Before we go, I just want to give a plug for our next Blaze Baking with Rach show, which is coming up. We're doing another special Friday Frontliners 3 weeks from today. I think it's 3 weeks. Friday, November 5th, we're having on Caroline Wright, who's the author of this book, 1, 2, 3, 4 Cake. Speaking of kids, this is like her 10th book, I want to say, and it's a board book for how to bake sprinkle cake with kids. And I seriously might borrow / kidnap the 5-year-old boy that lives next door, who's like one of my close friends and a great conversationalist if he's watching. She also wrote this book, The Cookie Truck, and that's going to be fun to do this afternoon. But Caroline has.
I'm gonna have to pick those up.
Yeah,
that's my level of baking too. I like it.
Oh, yeah, it's great. You can check out carolinebooks.com, and she also is an amazing food writer. She's written for Bon Appetit and The Kitchen and Rachel Ray, and she has a pretty cool story to tell, which we're going to talk about, kind of her life's journey and fighting cancer and, some fun stuff and some serious stuff, but we keep it all real. I just see somebody popped up. Blaze Loves is real.
Blaze Love is real. I love it.
Yeah, all love, all good. Thank you guys so much. I'm gonna
thank you.
I haven't figured out a way to turn us off without walking over here. You can see a close up of my face, but lovely. Thank you guys. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.